Today's class is shoulders and neck, and focusing on the shoulders because generally shoulders refer pain up into the neck. Neck pain generally refers up into the skull. So we'll start with the vagal nerve release, and we'll just do the salamander just to sort of really work on the upper two vertebrae in the neck. Do a little assessment. If you just take your right ear to your right shoulder and just see how tight you are in the sides of the neck. And go the other way, so pretty tight for me on this side. So there's two sorts of tightness. You've got the scalenes and your sternocleidomastoid. And then if you turn your head to look towards one shoulder, if you're tight in rotation, that's usually C1 and C2. So lots of different reasons for why you might be stiff in the neck. So the salamander is just a really good way to wake ourselves up, to really work on C1 and C2, but it also gives the scalenes in the side of the neck a bit of a stretch as well. So it sort of hits everything all in one go. So drop your shoulders, just right ear to right shoulder, so you can feel the scalene stretching. And then you're going to look down at your right shoulder with both eyes. So like I say, if you've got stiffness in rotation for the neck, if you've got a head that's in a forward posture, then that's usually more to do with your suboccipitals and your C1 and your C2. You're just looking for that deep breath, the sigh, the swallow. And even though you might have got it straight away, just stay here for the 30 seconds, just so you keep stretching into scalenes and a little bit into your trapezius as well. So your trapezius attaches to the cervical vertebra, right up to the skull. And it's often the cause of neck stiffness and neck pain, or has its influence, or maybe that's a better way of saying it. So just support your head, gently come out of it. Just move your neck. I always feel a little bit stiff when I do that one. So drop your shoulders. You're not lifting your shoulders to meet your ears. And left ear to left shoulder. So for me, quite stiff. And the stiffness is not coming from my scalenes. It's coming from my cervical vertebra, which means it's more the suboccipitals for me. And you're looking down to the left shoulder. So you can do this looking down. You can do it looking up. So there's no one vagal release. There's 12 different cranial nerves, and there's, you know, as many as 12 different releases as well. So they all do different things. But the salamander is specifically for C1, C2, for the suboccipitals, and for forward head posture. So there's my nice deep sigh, and I'm just going to stay here because I just want to still get a little bit of a stretch into that opposite side of the neck. So when the suboccipitals are quite tight, they move C1 and C2 around. They compress the nerves and the blood supply. They bring your head forward from the spine so that you get that forward head posture. They cause a lot of problems. So it's a really good one just to do at least once a week, just to make sure you're not going too much into that. So just put your hand on the side of the head, just support your head back into center. And again, just release your neck if you feel any tightness from that. Do a few shoulder rolls. So trying to figure out what's tight, just to remind you, if you turn your head to the right side, if you feel the pain on the side that you're turning towards, that's your levator scapulae, the muscles that lift your shoulder blades. If you feel the pain on the other side, that's your trapezius. So for me, I could say probably 50-50, I can feel both. Try the other side. So I can feel even more so levator scapulae. If you turn to the side, if that side hurts, that's levator scapulae. If you feel any pain on the other side, that's trapezius. So for me, not so much on this side. So it's just a good little test just to figure out where the pain is coming from. So we're going to start with the suboccipitals. We're going to hold our skull. We're going to put our thumbs along the rim of the skull. So you can feel the bone as you go along on the underside. You can come slightly above that and you've got deep muscle. So suboccipital there, suboccipitals. And then if you're coming under the rim of the skull, there's usually quite a few triggers there. So I want you to just sort of tip your head into your left hand and just use your right thumb and just gently go from the back of the ear and just gently work inwards and just see if you can find anything that feels tender. If there's like a knot in the muscle, if there's like a taut band in the muscle, these will all point towards a trigger point. So if you can feel a really tight band or a little lump, you found a trigger. And sometimes I can feel by pressing on mine, I can feel the pain into the back of this eye. So they're only small muscles, but they're very hard working muscles. And they get really, really locked up and tight. So you've got three groups. It's called the suboccipital triangle. You've got some that run horizontally along the rim of the skull, some that run vertically down C1 and C2, and some that run diagonally from C2 towards the mastoid process. So we're doing the horizontal ones at the moment. So you can just press into anything that feels tender. So maybe you're just going to use that light pressure. So just enough for the brain to notice. So you want to be about a 6 out of 10 in terms of painfulness. And you're just breathing, you're not holding your breath. It's a good one to do lying down. If you lie down with your head on a pillow, lying on your back, you don't have to use your arms quite so much. And then I'm going to just do a little bit of a side-to-side rub. It's already starting to feel more relaxed. I'm moving inward, so you're coming all the way in along the rim. If you find any more tender places, just press. So you're pressing for about 30 to 60 seconds. I found another one. It's a nice deep breath. So it's just pressure, just enough that you feel as though it's enough pressure for your brain to divert its attention to where that pressure is. So it's just sort of assessing now. The brain is going to look at that muscle, it's going to assess it, it's going to send messages to it for it to relax. And then when you feel like it's getting a bit softer, just do that little tiny rub. So you don't want to do this one with your head tipped forward, and you don't want to do it with your head tipped back. You want to be looking directly forward so the muscles are fairly relaxed. So using your left hand, just gently bring your head back into center. Just drop your arms for a minute because your arms and your shoulders will get a bit tired. Move your neck. And then when you're ready, you're going to hold the skull. You're going to tip your head over to the right side, support the side of the head with your hand. And now with your left thumb, starting just behind the ear on the mastoid process, sort of just above the rim or maybe on the rim, you decide. So it might be sort of one finger up from the rim, or it might be directly under the rim. Just check both as you work inwards. And you're just looking for that tender area, that taut band. Maybe it feels like a little peanut. So just find, so I've got a nice one here, and you can just press and think about a number 6 out of 10. And if you don't want to be 8, 9, 10, you want to be about 6. And again, I can feel this one behind the eye. So you might feel it in your eyebrow, you might feel it behind the eye. So possibly when you get your migraines, when you get your cluster headaches, is coming from the suboccipitals, possibly. So when you feel it starting to soften a little bit, just do that little gentle inward outward rub. So you're just stimulating a little bit more release in the muscle, and then you're working inwards again. So it's nice to do the single side, another one quite near to the center of the back of the skull. But if you wanted to, you could do it with both at the same time. I always think single side's better because you get a little bit more focused when you're just doing the one side. Two sides, you're getting an awful lot of feedback coming into the brain, and you might just miss a few things, you know. So like I say, lying down on a pillow with your hands at the back of the skull. You could slightly turn your head just to work one side and just get in there. So just drop the hands again, roll the shoulders, just move your neck. So how about doing the vertical one? So C1 is tucking up into the skull. If you look at the ceiling, dig your fingers in, that's C1, and then just below it is C2. So as you look forward again, we're really on C2 and the junction slightly into C1. So you're going to go on the processes either side of the spine, and you're just going to maybe use two fingers. I'm using first finger, second finger, and I'm just sort of testing one side, testing the other side. So for me, I can't feel any difference from one side to the other. So I'm just doing an oppositional rub. So as you push one finger, two fingers up, two fingers down, you're stretching. It is quite a nice way just to get into some of these muscles that are very close to the spine. And you're just using that little bit of rubbing just to send messages to the brain. Focus on these muscles now. So make sure you're not looking up, you're not looking down, you're looking forward. There's no major blood vessels that you need to worry about here. They're all in the front here and around the collarbone area. So at the back of the neck, you're quite safe to push quite firmly into the vertebra, into the processes that come out at the side of the vertebra. So then C2, up towards the back of the ear, there's a diagonal muscle. So these are all capitis muscles, which are called suboccipitals. So you could just hold your skull and you could rub downwards in a diagonal line to the bottom of C2 from the back of the ear. That feels quite nice. And you could also just turn your head slightly and just really get your thumb into one side. So I can feel these diagonal ones are actually quite tight for me. So these are called obliques, oblique muscles from the cervices, from the cervical spine. So for me, this one's really tender. So you could just press, you could go up and down the grain of the muscle, or if you want to be a little bit more aggressive, you can go across the grain, which is what I'm doing with my thumb. I'm using the pad of the thumb, not the bony end of the finger, and I'm just going across the grain. And you could support your forehead so the muscles don't have to become too active. So I'm going with the grain, I'm going against the grain. It's starting to get a little bit more relaxed. So turn your head towards the other hand, from the back of the ear, down towards C2. So there are deep blood vessels in the middle of this triangle. So you've got across, diagonally down and up. If you go right into the middle, you've got your suboccipital artery in there. You can't feel it. You can't feel the pulse. Thumbs are fine. So this is one of the danger areas in the body, that you don't put anything hard into this place. So thumbs are fine. You could use a soft ball. So 2 balls in a sock would do a nice job, but nothing like a massage tool. So you don't want to risk damaging this artery going up into the brain. Okay, so that's your suboccipitals. Just do a few shoulder rolls, turn your head. So we looked at trapezius and levator scapulae. So levator scapulae, come to the right side, just feel where your trapezius meets the bottom of your neck. Put your thumb in between the trapezius and the side of the neck. So it's pretty tender in there. So you could do this with 2 fingers of the opposite hand. I prefer to use the thumb of the same side hand because it lifts up the trapezius so that you can really get your thumb under the trapezius, and you're sort of about C6 here. So C7 is just below, and you're just pushing your thumb into the side of the neck under the trapezius. So you're trying to find that space between the 2. So look for something that feels very tender. I found mine, and I've got a little, like a little knot in the muscle here. So you could go around the peripheral area of that, you could go into it and then come out of it, or you could just press. So you can either do opposite hand, using 2 or 3 fingers to do that. So again, there's no blood vessels to worry about here, just watch your nails. Or if you want to get a little bit more between the trapezius into the side of the neck, so it's right where the shoulder meets the neck. So you're about here if you look from the other side. And you know this one because it's usually quite a painful trigger. You don't want to turn your head away, you want to be looking forwards. I'm doing a little bit of both because you get tired with your arms up. So that's the middle trigger. And then if you were to come up about halfway up the side of the neck, you can do it either with the opposite hand, 2 fingers, or you can do it with the thumb on the same side. You're on the side of the neck, and that's levator scapulae 3. So a little bit tender for me. I'm doing circles with my thumb here. There's quite a few triggers through here, so you've got your scalene triggers as well. But the levator scapulae 3 is about halfway up the neck, on the side of the neck. So levator scapulae 1 is at that angle of the shoulder blade. So just sort of locate it with your fingers, opposite hand. We'll do this one on the floor. We'll come back to this one. So go to the other side. You've got your trapezius where it meets the neck, and you're going to be level with the top of your shoulders. You're going to get 2 fingers and just see if you can press into the side of the neck and just get under your trapezius. Just find anything that feels tender. So 2 fingers of the opposite hand or the thumb on the same side hand. So literally at the bottom of your neck where the shoulders are, into the side of the neck. Make sure you're not digging nails in there. It's the pad of your thumb, or you're using the pads of your 2 fingers on the opposite hand. Again, I wouldn't use a tool for this because it's your neck. So you've got to be, really, really, fingers are the best thing. You can feel the quality of the muscle and the knots in the muscle. You can feel if there's a pulse there. There won't be here, but in some places in the body there is. So for me, this side is actually quite good. So I'm going back to this side because this for me was the side that's quite unhappy. So generally, levator scapulae 2 is one of the universal triggers for most people, along with 1 and 2 of trapezius. So they're all quite close together and they pretty much affect everybody. So 1 to do little and often, when you're sat on the sofa watching television, just, learn to really become familiar with these places and how they feel, and deal with the triggers, on a daily basis, and that will help a lot. You sort of could do both at the same time, but depends how painful it is. But the general rule with necks is to do one side, just in case you are doing it wrong and you're pressing on a blood vessel. You don't want to affect the blood flow to the brain. So if you stick to the one side rule, that keeps it nice and safe. So we'll come back opposite hand to trapezius, and we're just going to put the thumb at the front, 2 fingers at the back, and we're just going to do the squeeze, the pinch. So find the trigger points, and then just feel like you're lifting the muscle up slightly. So you feel like you're just pulling it away from the bones of your collarbone and the top of your shoulder blade. So as you pick it up, just hold it. You can move your neck maybe. So I can feel this one going right up into my ear, into my neck. So as you hold it, as you squeeze the triggers and as you lift, you're sending messages to the brain. The brain is diverting and saying to the muscle, why are you in pain? Why are you so tight? So it's bringing the brain's focus to these triggers and helping the brain to just let go. So as you do trigger point work, you start to advance it by bringing in a stretch. As well as pressing on the triggers, you actually start to stretch the muscle as well to help to facilitate the muscle letting go. So I'm not so much looking this way, I'm coming from center and I'm looking away. And as I do that, I can feel the muscle in my hand stretching and responding to that movement. So I'm just going to speed up the release. One more. And that's actually feeling quite nice now, and the pain has come right down. So just squeeze the muscle, feel the tone of the muscle. Trapezius is really easy to gauge because you feel it, and when it's really out of balance, it's like rock or iron, like steel, and you can feel the difference from one side to the other as well. So thumb at the front, opposite hand, 2 fingers at the back, just squeeze the muscle. So just bring those 3 points together and then feel as though you're lifting, gently lifting the muscle away from the front of the collarbone and the back of the shoulder blade. So you don't need to lift so hard that it becomes an effort for the hand. You just squeeze and lift away from the bones and just allow the brain to get used to that. So now the brain's diverted from this side to this side, and you could add in your rotational movement if you feel comfortable with that. So I must admit, even, this is not the latest scapula as it was before, but or the suboccipitals, but I can still feel influences into the eyebrow, into the back of the eye, into the ear, through the vagal system. So when you do these trigger points, you're working on the nervous system. And then that enables the muscles to relax. So if you feel it is getting easier, you could squeeze a little bit harder. That's always a good way to gauge if the trigger point is releasing. So the pain goes up and then it starts to quickly come down from there again. Last time, and just let go. Roll the shoulders. So, if you feel the tone of the muscle, sometimes, I can feel both sides. I can still feel this side is a little bit tighter than this side. You might repeat it and do it again a second time because these are universal trigger points. So, they're pretty active for most people most of the time. So take your left hand to the corner of your right shoulder. And then, you're just holding the back of the shoulder, but bring your first finger into the little groove that's formed by the collarbone and the shoulder blade at the back. So you've got the top of the shoulder blade, you've got the collarbone coming together, and that creates your acromial notch in here. So if you put your finger in that little triangle, so it looks like a little notch, if you put your finger into that space, it's always pretty tender in there. And when you use fingers, put one finger on top of another so that you don't strain the finger. Now, this is a space that if you wanted to, You could use a massage tool. There's no blood vessels you need to worry about. As I say, I prefer fingers because there's a lot more information through the fingers. So this is your trapezius, comes from the base of the skull down through the cervical vertebra to the peak of the shoulder, and then it comes down to the bottom of the rib cage. So we're just getting into this trigger point here. You can feel, the notch, you can feel the bone of the shoulder blade. You can even come below the bone, the ridge of the shoulder blade. And there's another trigger point here. So this one would be where your middle finger is. So your first finger is the acromial notch. The middle finger is really, you're coming into supraspinatus here. So you could just get your finger in here. Just do a little bit of, it's called stripping, where you press and move along. So you press and move outwards. So you're moving about through a centimetre, and you're just really just working the muscles here. So holding your shoulder is actually quite a good thing to do. You can find quite a few triggers in the shoulders and in the trapezius, in the notch, and your supraspinatus just below. So we'll do the other side. We'll take the hand to the shoulder. You're going to bring your first finger up, and you're going to find that little notch. I'll do it like that. So you've got your collarbone, your shoulder blade, and you're going right into the middle. Two fingers, one on top of the other, or use your tool. So again, these are really good ones just to do while you're sitting in the evenings and watching television. You could just go through all these places, just check them, see how they feel. Pretty sore on this side. So then if you hold your shoulder and think about where your middle finger is, you're just below, you've got the acromial notch, you're below the ridge of the shoulder blade, and you're just in the muscle here. And again, another really tender spot. And you can be fairly relaxed in the arm, try not to be too active. And you can also bring your arm behind your back, which just stretches the shoulder backwards a little bit and just helps you to find those muscles. I thought I had someone coming, but it's just someone using my drive to turn around. Okay, so just roll the shoulders. So those are the manual ones. So we'll move the chair away. We might keep it close. We might come back to it if there's time. And we're going to grab the roller, come onto the floor. It's one of my favorite releases is the seesaw. I'm just moving all my paraphernalia. The seesaw for the trapezius. So you're going to come into sitting. You're going to put the back of your shoulders on the roller, support your head, and then you're coming to just below the level of your shoulders, below the CT junction, that big vertebra that is your first thoracic vertebra. And you're just going to drop your bottom, lift your head, and then drop your head and lift your bottom. And you're just going across the deep muscle. Make sure your feet are not too far out. The deep muscle at the back of your shoulders. So above the spine of the shoulders and below the CT junction. So it's just a nice way to get into that tight place where you always wish someone would give you a shoulder massage. Keep your chin slightly retracted. You're not allowing your neck to be relaxed. As you retract your chin, you've switched on your neck muscles to stabilize and support the neck. So you're not tense, but you're not relaxed either when that chin is tucked. Okay, bring the bottom to the floor and just gently lift the head. So kick the legs out, come away from the roller, put the roller to the side. We're going to grab a little cushion for our head. I can't remember if I put that on the list of things that you might need. And you're going to grab your ball or balls in a sock, and you're going to come to, if you look at the shoulder blade at the back, you're on the inner edge of your shoulder blade, one on that sort of diagonal line that cuts across, so that's your levator gap one, and slightly inwards from that. So if you put the ball, I've got two balls, so I'm going to put them sort of running across in line with that upper angle of your shoulder blade. So you're going to put the pillow under your head. You've got that. If you've only got one ball, it's in that diagonal slope at the inner edge of your shoulder blade at the top. And yeah, this one's probably a 9 out of 10. So, and probably for most people. So just find what you can bear. Hopefully you haven't chosen the ball that's too hard. If you have, go softer. Start by just moving your nose from right to left. Add an arm float. So for me, it was a 9, but it's coming down pretty quickly, actually. It's probably down to about a 7 now. If it's going up, then change the ball and make the ball softer. Circles are going to move your shoulder blades around, so it's going to really make that muscle work. So this is where you start to combine stretching and movement with trigger point release work to speed up the process. Take some nice deep breaths. A little bit longer. So I'm drawing circles with my elbows. My circles are getting bigger. You could do both at the same time, but I think, you know, if it's painful, it's going to be a little bit too much to do both. So it's quite nice to just focus on the one side, really sort of learn about your body and figure out, you know, where the pain is channeling in your body. So take the ball away now and put it on the other side, on that diagonal angle of your shoulder blade. I've got two balls in a sock, so I've got one on the diagonal angle and one slightly in from that, which is a trapezius trigger point. So I'm sort of hitting two at the same time. And for me, this side's nowhere near as bad. I'm probably about a 4 on this side. So you're just moving your nose. You're floating your arms. So this is where doing single sides gives you a lot more information. If I put two balls there, I wouldn't have noticed that one side was worse than the other. I would have been just overwhelmed with how uncomfortable it was feeling. So arm circles, elbow circles. You can move your nose, you can move your head. So even if you're only a sort of a 3 or 4 out of 10, it's still a really lovely release to do. So don't just think, I'll just do the bad side. Do them both. And if necessary, go back to the bad side. If you've got one side that's really painful, still do the other side, but then come back to that other side and see if it's come down a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my ball back on the right side for me and just see. Yeah, it's much better now. So it's probably about a 3 now. But if it was still painful, you would just do it again and see if you could bring it down from whatever and bring it down again. So what I want you to do now is take the ball in the sock and put it level with the inside of your shoulder blade, but between the shoulder blade and the spine. So we're back into trapezius and rhomboids. So, you know, you can hold the sock and that gives you a little bit of control, and make sure your head is supported by the pillow, or you could use your roller. And you've got 3 main triggers for your rhomboids. If you've got the inner edge of your shoulder blade, you've got one at the top, one in the middle, and one at the bottom of your shoulder blade. Anywhere between the spine and the shoulder blade, you're going to be hitting triggers for rhomboids or trapezius. So just see how that feels. You add your arm floats. For me, not too bad. Arm circles. So if you've got 2 balls in a sock, or even 3, you can sort of speed up this process by hitting that whole area. So I'm going to move my ball down a little bit into the middle trigger, between the shoulder blade and the spine, in the middle of the inner edge of your shoulder blade. Work the hands, work the arms, do elbow circles. So this middle one is a little bit less happy than the upper one. So don't presume if one's okay that all 3 of them will be. Take some nice deep breaths. Move your neck, move your nose. If you can feel it relating into the neck, just move your head. So then I'm moving it down. So now I'm level with the bottom of the shoulder blade on the inner edge, right at the bottom, but between the shoulder blade and the spine. And again, this one's a little bit unhappy. If you feel uncomfortable with having the ball on one side, you can always put your hands under your bottom and just support your pelvis so that you don't feel that you're arching your back to reach the floor. You can also put your left arm under the left side of your body so that you don't feel like you're unbalanced. Or you could put a pillow there as well. So just support the body in any way that it needs. So I'm taking the ball in the sock and I'm going to the other side, and I'm level with the top of the inner edge of the shoulder blade, between the shoulder blade and the spine. So if you feel like you're rolling to one side, you can put your hand under the other side of your pelvis, just support your body so you feel a little bit more supported. So for me, this side is actually quite unhappy. So for me, I know what it is. It's my SI joint imbalance. So I've got issues all down this side at the moment because of my sacroiliac joint. And so it relates all the way up this left side, even into the shoulder and the neck. So these are things that you're looking at. You're just thinking globally rather than just locally. So if you've got the whole of one side of your body is out of balance and unhappy, then you may be looking at something really quite powerful, like an SI joint dysfunction or hip issues, leg issues. And it's generally feeding upwards from the ground, not downwards. So if you've got issues in your shoulder girdle, the cause isn't necessarily the shoulder girdle, it's going to be lower down in the kinetic chain. So probably a better way to say that would be that the shoulder girdle doesn't have the same ability to upset the pelvis and the legs as the legs and the pelvis have the ability to upset the shoulder girdle, if that makes any sense at all. So just bring your ball in the sock down into the middle of the shoulder blade, between the shoulder blade and the spine, trigger point 2. You feel unbalanced, you put your other hand under the other side of your pelvis, especially if you do think there's pelvic issues, lumbar spine issues. Just make sure your skeleton is nicely supported. So take some nice deep breaths. I'm just moving my knees because it's just facilitating a little bit of movement. And again, I can feel this right down the left side of my body. If you're feeling it upwards into the neck, move the head, roll the head, just create some movement so that you just help the muscles to let go of the tension, release anything that feels painful. So pain leaving the body, not pain going into the body. And again, if you feel ready to, you bring that ball down again so it's level with the bottom of the shoulder blade on the inside, between the shoulder blade and the spine. So supporting myself again because this side feels quite unbalanced. Take some nice deep breaths. Okay. So take the ball out from underneath of you. Find with your left hand, find the spine of your shoulder blade on the right, and then come above the spine where you feel that deep, deep muscle. And you're going to put the ball, all the balls, above the spine of the shoulder blade. So remembering that the shoulder blade, the spine is about 1/3 of the way down the shoulder blade. It's not the top of the shoulder blade. So what you feel as a ridge is actually about 1/3 of the way down the shoulder blade. The shoulder blade comes almost to the top of your shoulder. So you're just above the spine, and you've got the two, if you've got two balls there, they're running across. If it's just one ball, you want to be about 1/3 of the way inwards from the inner edge of your shoulder blade. So there's a trigger point there for supraspinatus, and we've already done the one for the outside, but we're just going to float the arm and just see if there's anything in there that feels a little bit painful. So supraspinatus is quite closely linked with levator scapulae. So if your levator scapulae has got triggers, then quite often supraspinatus fires up as well. So it's all part of your rotator cuff. So about 1/3 of the way in from the inner edge of your shoulder blade, or you could move the ball out to that notch, sort of about 1/3 of the way in from the outside of your shoulders, and just see if there's anything in there that feels painful. If you're not sure with a ball, then go back to fingers and just press your fingers along the spine of the shoulder blade and just find anything that feels a bit sore. So fingers, for supraspinatus, fingers get in there a little bit better than a big ball. And if you've got no problems, take the ball over to the other side. So you find the spine with your opposite hand. You go above the spine in the deep muscle, about 1/3 of the way from the inside of your shoulder blades, 1/3 of the way above the spine. And for me, this one's quite active. And I'm going to use my fingers because I just feel I've got a little bit more control with my fingers. I've got quite a knot on this side. So you can put two fingers together, or you can have two fingers side by side, or you can cross your fingers and just get in there. You could use your massage tool. So massage tools are actually quite good for these sort of places. So again, you're moving your neck. I can feel this relating up into my neck. So really take notice of pain pathways in the body. So when you get that neural picture in your brain of the nervous system and how the pain is feeding through the nervous system, then that's really valuable information. And then if you wanted to, you could move out to almost about 1/3 of the way in from the shoulder into that little groove, that little notch, and just see. And for me, this one is even more painful. So quite a lot going on my left side. So through the nervous system, master triggers fire up satellite triggers that are all around. So if you've got a problem, then you quite often find that that whole peripheral area is also quite upset. So you can also do stripping here, where you press and you move backwards and forwards through about 1 centimetre and just really get into the muscle fibres. So you want to do that in the direction of the grain of the muscle. Okay, and then just move the neck. So you're going to take the ball in the sock now, and you're going to go to the other side again, and you're going to go below the spine of the shoulder blade, and you're going to just put the ball anywhere in the shoulder blade area. So make sure your neck is supported. I might change this for my roller now, because I just feel like my neck needs a little bit more support. And you've got the ball below the spine of the shoulder blade, and you're just going to move around until you find anything that feels a little bit painful. So I found a really good one here. So there's a cluster of about 5 trigger points in the space below the spine of the shoulder blade. So you've got the spine, and then there's quite a deep muscle below the spine there, and this is all part of your rotator cuff. So you could do circles with your elbows, you could do arm floats, you could turn your head. Just find what feels right for you. So this is infraspinatus. So infra means below and supra means above. Spinatus means spine. So your infraspinatus is below the spine, and it's all part of the rotator cuff. Take some nice deep breaths. Just move your body over the ball and just find those places that feel painful. Just get in there. So I would say probably for me, 3 of the triggers out of the 5 are quite unhappy here. So if you've been in the garden and you've been using your arms a lot, your shoulders a lot, then you need to keep an eye on these triggers, because you end up, if you ignore them, you can end up with frozen shoulders, and that can take quite a long time to resolve. Whereas if you just balance these triggers and release them, then hopefully you're never going to get the frozen shoulder. So while we're here, take your opposite hand into the armpit, put your thumb into your armpit, and think about where your first finger is, where your second finger is, where your third finger is, and where your fourth finger is. So there's a cluster of triggers here. You've got your teres minor, your teres major, and you've got your latissimus dorsi triggers, all in roughly where your fingers are. So if you sort of dig your fingers in a little bit, you just might find something that feels a little bit tender. And what you could do then is take the ball and bring it to the outside of the armpit, and you could just gently roll the ball in this area. If you're not sure, so the ball is going to be much more aggressive. If you're not sure, you could just swing up. You could use the roller. So maybe I'm going to try the roller, because it just gives you, these triggers can be really painful. It just gives you a little bit more of a gentle massage. So I'm supporting my neck and head. I'm not moving into breast tissue. So you're just at the back of your armpit, and you're just rolling more backwards. So you're looking up at the ceiling. You can go a little bit up and down. So anything that's in this outer edge of your armpit is all part of your rotator cuff group. Teres major, teres minor. Latissimus dorsi isn't, but it's very close to those triggers, so you can actually get into that as well. I'm making a circle with my body because it sort of hits all of them in one go. Make sure there's no movement in the bones of your neck. So pretty painful through here. So again, these are silent muscles. You would never know that they're in trouble until you find their triggers, and then suddenly you realize these muscles are already getting quite tight and out of balance. So when you've got muscles of the rotator cuff that are affected by triggers, then you start to use the rotator cuff muscles in a different way, which puts more strain on the ones that are the other muscles in the group, and then you can end up with problems. So you want them all to be nicely balanced. So like I say, up and down, forward and back. And then while we're here, we'll just bring the roller down sort of below the level of the bust and more towards the back of the rib cage, and just get into your serratus muscles. So the serratus muscles, serratus posterior inferior, is going to be underneath the shoulder blades in a little sling that sort of comes around towards the side of the rib cage. And again, these muscles can get super tight and locked up. So we're in the area of the lats as well. but the lats is a bigger, broader, expansive muscle. Serratus is underneath. And you just find sometimes that you can be exquisitely painful through these muscles. Just watch your neck and your shoulders as you move forward and backwards. So I'm doing a little bit of a scrub, but it's a very slow, gentle scrub. So I'm always a bit tight through here. Okay, so changing sides. So we were doing infraspinatus. I'll keep my roller for my neck. Infraspinatus is below the spine of the shoulder blade. And you're just going to move the ball around anywhere in that deep muscle below the spine. So find the spine of the shoulder blade with your opposite hand. Anywhere below that spine in the triangle of your shoulder blade can be infraspinatus. So you're just moving around, a little bit of a wiggle, and you're going to find, there we go, I found mine. Usually small, but particularly nasty. And so you just move up and down, side to side. You could just roll your knees, roll your head. Just getting into these. So like I say, they're all pretty silent, these muscles, until you touch their triggers, and then you realize how hard your shoulder girdle is working. You're doing some arm floats and arm circles, elbow circles. And while you're here, just put your thumb in your armpit, spread your fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and just dig your fingers in and just think about some of these muscles. So the upper ones, 1, 2, and 3 are teres minor and teres major. And the fourth finger, the lowest finger, is your latissimus dorsi trigger. So if you just sort of feel around in here. So for me up here, higher up is quite tender. So you could do those with the ball if you want to just pull on the sock and get the ball into the sides at the back of the armpit. Or again, if you want to be a little bit kinder, bring your roller in. You're going to put the roller at the back of your armpit, support your neck and head, and you're just going to gently roll. So you've got that thick muscle at the back of your armpit, which sort of wraps around the sides of the chest and towards the shoulder blades. It's all part of your rotator cuff. So not into the armpit, not into the breast tissue, just more backwards. So you're looking up at the ceiling, you're looking forward. You can also do the up and down roll, which is really going to get to all 4 triggers at the same time. So again, definitely for me, this side is more reactive. So you're just looking at your whole body and you're just trying to figure out how the pain is channeling through the body, through the nervous system. Ooh, found a nice one there. So this is my teres major. So I'm just holding here. So then we came down below the level of the bust, but we're at the back of the rib cage, slightly coming into the sides. So at first it will be your lats, your latissimus dorsi that you feel, but then as your muscles relax, then you're going to maybe get into your posterior serratus muscles. It's always a good idea to look at serratus. So serratus are in the sides of the rib cage, they're in the back of the rib cage, low down. They're also in the top of the rib cage, sort of in the trapezius area as well. So you just sort of look at them every now and again. So I'm doing that slow, gentle scrub, just to really get into the muscles. They're not deep muscles. They just spread out and cover the rib cage. Okay, so we're going to finish with what we started with. So you could use your roller. I'm going to use my sock because I've got 2 balls in the sock. So if you've got two balls, you can use the sock. That's going to be a better option. If not, you're going to use your roller, and you're going to put either the ball or the sock at the back of your skull, right under the rim of the skull, and you're just going to hold the ball or hold the roller, and you're just going to do some chin dropping or nose nodding. So if I've dropped my elbows, you can see I'm just nodding my head up and down, and I'm working through all three groups of the suboccipital. So this nodding action is going to hit the horizontal capitis muscles, the diagonal ones and the vertical ones, all in one go. So just really just gently dropping the chin and then looking up. You could turn your nose from right to left. So two balls in a sock is just perfect for this. It's a little bit smaller than the roller, and it's going to get in there a little bit better than a roller will. And you could quite easily, quite happily stay here for 5 or 10 minutes and just give your neck a real treat. So you could turn your head to the right and you could just nod, looking at the right side, do side to side, do circles. This is a little bit your mastoid muscles as well, your masseters and your sternocleidomastoid, where it all comes into the mastoid process. So this area is gold, and then you come back through center, look to the left and up and down through the nose, side to side, circles. So definitely a good thing to do if you're prone to migraines and cluster headaches. I would certainly look at the suboccipitals. So just take the ball away, just carefully, knees together, just roll over sideways, come up into sitting. And that was shoulders and neck. Looking at how the shoulder muscles feed pain up into the neck.